Egypt has now proposed an initial two-day ceasefire in Gaza to exchange 4 Israeli hostages of Hamas militants for some Palestinian prisoners.
And this is negotiations to end the year-long war resumed in Qatar's capital on Sunday. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi made the announcement without saying whether the plan has been formally presented to either Israel or Hamas. Sisi said more negotiations will take place within 10 days.
Now, Egypt, alongside Qatar and the United States, has for months been mediating indirect talks with little success. CIA Director William Burns and Qatari Prime Minister met David Barnea, who is the head of Israel's spy agency, the Mossad, in a bid to discuss attempts to move towards a hostage for ceasefire deal.
This as families of the hostages continue building pressure on the Israeli government. On Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was heckled during a memorial service in Jerusalem for the October 7th attacks. Bereaved family members of the victims as well as the hostages interrupted his speech with shouts of "Shame on you."
Meanwhile, Israel continues to pound Gaza while also fighting a war against Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Gaza Civil Defense Agency said that Israel struck a school building sheltering displaced Palestinians on Sunday, killing at least 9 people. In total, at least 53 people were killed across Gaza in the last 24 hours, including 46 in the north of the Strip.
On the other hand, at least 21 people were killed in Israeli strikes on 3 different areas in southern Lebanon, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. This as global calls for restraint grow. The UN Security Council will meet on Monday at Iran's request, with Tehran calling on the body to condemn recent Israeli strikes that killed 4 of its soldiers. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Alan Burstein, live from Boston. He's a professor of political science and Israel Institute fellow at Tufts University. So thank you so much for joining us on WION.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, sir, Egypt has proposed a 2-day Gaza ceasefire deal. This includes the exchange of Israeli hostages, of course, in return for some Palestinian prisoners. There's been no comment from Israel or Hamas yet. We know that ceasefire negotiations, they've been stalled for quite a while now. How do you assess the possibility of a ceasefire this time around?
So I'll say that just recently Al Arabiya, which is a Saudi news network, did quote some Hamas officials as saying if this deal would be proposed to them, they are going to reject it. So even though the Hamas is saying it hasn't been proposed, they're saying if it's proposed, it will be rejected. There's a lot of deals that are right now being floated. This is one of 3 deals that have been discussed. There's been discussed a 2-week deal. That was an Israeli proposal. Then Hamas has said that possibly they're going to propose an all-encompassing deal, a release of all hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, and a complete IDF withdrawal. All of this is just the initial attempts. Everyone's sort of throwing something out there to see, can negotiations start up? One more thing that I'll say, though, about why Egypt is proposing something that is very unlikely to be accepted. There's also somewhat of a competition right now between Egypt and Qatar over who is going to lead the negotiations. In Egypt, the head of the internal intelligence, Abbas Kamel, has been replaced by Hassan Rashad. He was not invited to the current negotiation rounds that are going on in Qatar. And as part of that, Egypt also proposed this new deal almost as an attempt to say we're still part of this, because no one really knows what's going to happen with the Hamas leadership after Sinwar's death. So the sides are trying to see who is going to be the more dominant figure in the region.
Right, Mr. Burstein, you speak of how Hamas officials are saying that they will outrightly reject the proposal. Some other reports also suggest that Hamas has said that it will accept the latest ceasefire deal as long as it incorporates its July 2nd demands, which of course includes an end to the hostilities in Gaza and withdrawal of all the Israeli troops from the Strip. Adding to that, Iran had earlier issued a statement saying that it might not respond to Israel's attack if a ceasefire deal is secured in Gaza. And Gallant has said that not all goals can be achieved militarily. So keeping all this in mind, do you think that the situation will perhaps move forward, and how much of an impact will Israel's precision strikes in Iran have on the ceasefire deal?
So, unfortunately, when it comes to the negotiations between the sides, nothing has really come closer than where things were in May or in July. The main sticking points are still the fact that Hamas demands complete IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and the removal of the siege of the Gaza Strip. Israel in turn has said it is not going to allow an end to the war. It is not going to withdraw from the Netzarim corridor, the Philadelphia access, and it is not going to accept Hamas rule in the Gaza Strip. Those things have not changed. Hamas is saying they'll accept the deal on the terms they had before. Israel has said it's not going to move on those terms. So, unfortunately, all these new deals are different ways to try to jumpstart a new negotiations, but they're not bringing us any more forward as long as the sides are refusing to compromise on any of those things. With regards to Iran's role in the situation right now, it really depends if Iran decides to retaliate to Israel's retaliation in the ongoing situation. Right now, Iran initially indicated that it is likely to not retaliate, that it may be able to see the situation as complete. I think I spoke on your channel also about how Israel maybe carried out this attack in order to try to let this situation conclude itself between Israel and Iran. So if that happens, we're going to continue to see the escalations between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Hamas, and Iran continuing to fund the proxies, as has been for the past year. However, if Iran does retaliate, Israel will probably take it to the next level in its retaliation after that. That already has much more potential to destabilize the region.
Right, and just to expand on what my colleague asked you as well and what you said, of course we know the UNSC talks on Israel strikes on Iran, they are slated to take place today. Iranian envoy to the United Nations has said that Iran reserves its inherent right to respond to the Israeli strikes at a time of their own choosing. Now, do you reckon that how Iran responds, that's of course contingent on what happens going forward, it's also contingent on the results of this negotiation. How do you assess things will pan out going forward?
So one of the things that we always have to consider in this war with every single actor is the internal politics, right? Iran is fighting Israel. Israel's fighting Hezbollah. Israel's fighting Hamas. But as I said also with Egypt, what happens in the internal politics is really what determines the way things go. We've seen this with Israel, Netanyahu and his government. Similarly, in Iran, there are two different voices in the government. The president is a newly elected president. He would really like the situation to spiral down. He wants to focus on the economy. He's considered more of a moderate. The economy in Iran is very crippled with sanctions. He didn't want Iran to even retaliate now. However, he does not control the military. The military responds directly to the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and he in turn wants, or at least is claimed that he wanted to see more escalations and more retaliation. So really, Iran is going to continue to be an actor in the region no matter what when it comes to the war. But what will happen right now, it depends less on whether Israel manages to attack a certain target or not, and more who wins the internal political struggle within Iran's leadership.
Right, Mr. Boostin, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. A lot of uncertainty moving forward regarding the ceasefire talks in Doha, but thank you for joining us on World DNA with your insights.
Thank you. Have a good day.